Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to TREP Expo 2020. I'm Mike Bowers. I am the Director of the Center for Entrepreneurship here at Embry-Riddle and a Professor of Entrepreneurship at the O'Malley College of Business. As a response to the challenges of COVID, we've gone virtual, obviously. The new format, however, allows us to announce for the good news that for the first time, we have exhibitors from Prescott joining us, as well as a larger contingent from alumni and from the worldwide campus than we normally do. So thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. For our exhibitors, just a quick note that as we do our introductions and the judges make a few remarks, please, if you would like to ask the judges a question, do so in your chat box at the bottom of your screen. We'll compile your questions, and after the judges finish with the remarks, we will handle as many as we can in the time allowed. Let's move straight away into the program with a few words of welcome from the O'Malley College of Business, Dean Shannon Gibson. Dean Gibson joined us in the spring of 2020 from the University of Texas Commerce. She joined Embry-Riddle at a time of historical uncertainty. Dr. Gibson has not only kept our ship afloat, but indeed has us on course toward new goals. Dean Gibson has a background in entrepreneurship at a number of college campuses. Her comments are grounded in her own personal experience. So Dean Gibson, let me turn the podium over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bowers. Hello and welcome to the 2020 TREP Expo, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University's annual competition for aspiring entrepreneurs. I am Shannon Gibson, Dean of the O'Malley College of Business, and I'm thrilled to have you join us as we support nascent entrepreneurs in their efforts to add value by unleashing a brighter future for the world. As the world's largest and most respected university specializing in aviation and aerospace, Embry-Riddle has been at the forefront of groundbreaking aeronautical milestones since the early days of flight. Events hosted by the Center for Entrepreneurship, including TREP Expo, reinforce our legacy of world-class education, innovation, and business development. Thank all of you for being here today. In the words of Peter Drucker, the best way to predict the future is to create it. The innovators here today are walking the talk, and I am proud that the O'Malley College of Business and the Center for Entrepreneurship are able to be part of their journey. Thank you all again. I look forward to hearing from the judges and seeing more from the many entrepreneurs who have put together some wonderful presentations today.
Thank you, Dean Gibson. Your comments were spot on. Now let me provide a brief introduction to our panel of distinguished judges. We have been promoting these judges to you over the past few weeks, and you can find a lot more detail about this distinguished panel on the center's website. We don't have time to review their pedigrees in detail today. Suffice it to say, we're honored to have such a distinguished group of individuals willing to invest their time and talent into Embry-Riddle's new generation of entrepreneurs. As a quick way to put faces with reputation, let me introduce you to, first, Jim Zucco. Jim has over 35 years experience in software, security, and communications. He served as CEO for both private and public companies, founding several. He's currently partner at Allocate Capital and serves as chairman of the board on the board of advisors for the Center for Entrepreneurship. Next up, Lillian Myers. Lillian serves as executive director of Starter Studio, an important strategic partner of the center and the research park. Lillian has been a part of the founding team for several successful technology-based startups and now uses that background to mentor new ventures throughout the area, including particularly those with women founders. Mike Geldart. Mike is a recent graduate from Embry-Riddle and is founder, CEO of GRD Biomechanics, making an innovative knee brace which is gaining significant traction in the marketplace. GRD is an incubator company at the Research Park, also known as the Microplex, and he has received investment from early stage venture firms doing quite well, moving the company forward. Richard Fox has over 30 years experience in the creation of new technology companies. He's a venture partner in the Idea Fund, one of the most active venture capital firms in the Southeast. Vince Monteparte Vince is an Embry-Riddle graduate, a founder and active investor in software technology companies. Currently running his family office, ISM Enterprises in San Diego. He's involved with Solis Capital Partners and Sway Ventures, both West Coast early stage venture firms. Andrea Kirk joins us today. Andrea is a senior corporate counsel for Halifax Health. Prior to that, Andrea was a partner at Cobb Cole, for a practice focused on corporate and business law. Greg Johnson. Greg is an Embry-Riddle alum and is currently the Chief Technical Officer at One Sky Flight. OneSky is a holding company for names you'll recognize: FlexJet, Flight Options, SenatJet, and SkyJet. Greg also recently founded Tuvolia, a new player in business jet services and related logistical services. Kyle Slover. Kyle is an Embry-Riddle alum with over 25 years experience in aerospace operations, with a particular emphasis on entrepreneurial ventures involving business aircraft. Kyle is currently the Spaceline Maintenance Program Manager for Virgin Galactic and brings to us a lot of information, a lot of knowledge about the new burgeoning new space industry. Neil Carew. Neil is also an Embry-Riddle alum. Neil is the Vice President of Portfolio Operations at Providence Strategic Growth, a technology-focused arm of Providence Equity Partners in Boston, a very prestigious private equity firm in the Northeast. Richard LaCursey. Richard is a managing partner at Venvelo. Venvelo is an early stage venture fund headquartered in Winter Park, Florida. Venvelo is often the very first professional money into new startups in Central Florida. Richard's background is in communications technology with an early interest in mobile mesh networks. A couple of folks are not able to be with us today that served as judges. First is Jim Reginor. Jim is a retired Air Force colonel with a distinguished military career. He's an Embry-Riddle grad, and he's founder of a startup called Veritex, a company building a digital commerce marketplace for the aerospace and medical industries. Jim is at the last minute, had a deal go sideways. He's in the process of acquiring a company and it's gone a little bit sideways. He decided to excuse himself so he can re-enter the negotiations. He offers his apologies to the exhibitors for not being able to join us today. This same is true for Heather Vargas. Heather is another one of the judges. Heather is managing partner at Cobb Cole. Her background is in intellectual property. She's currently involved in a very serious mediation, and the mediation is taking longer than expected, and she has got to put her attention on that. So she, again, expresses her regrets for not being able to join us today. But with those brief introductions, let me point out we have innovators, investors, and builders of business on the judging panel. Thank you for joining us. Would any one of you like to make a few comments useful to our audience at large regarding what you observed while judging our exhibits? Turning it over to you, the judges.
Mike, I'm happy to do it, Richard LaCursey. Mike, in looking at and reviewing a number of the proposals and the presentations, I thought they were very well put together in most cases. One of the things that I found over the course of time in like the last 35 years of working with early stage companies, I would say about 95% of all early stage companies are involved in getting themselves off the ground. A lot of things that are important to get started, but there's only one thing in my mind that really matters to an early stage company, and that's revenue. Again, important things aside, revenue begins to define customer interest, the level of interest in trying to sell a product and move forward. So for these companies and the presentations that we have, one of the areas that I thought might have been lacking more so than others was a lack of marketing and understanding of sales and what's necessary to bring a product to market. That's just, I'll leave that as my comment. But as early stage people get started, things they need to pay attention to is the marketplace and how their product's going to be received. Thanks.
So you're saying selling stuff is important.
Yeah, that's right, Mike.
Okay, good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Someone else, please.
Go ahead, Lillian. I'll let you go first.
Thank you so much. I'll echo what Richard said. I think what I saw as someone who's a go-to-market person specifically is the miss on understanding market segmentation, who you're actually selling to, what the value proposition is for those you're selling to, and why they have an interest in buying it. And then, of course, what your competition is. There were some real holes in it. I think what we always see in these sorts of competitions are great ideas. We always see the opportunity to show others what really interesting things you come up with and a general sense of who it's for. And as an entrepreneur myself, what I know is that we often try to solve problems that we understand deeply and closely, but understanding how many more of us there are who would be interested or would buy or will be decidedly the customer for this and what they're willing to pay and what their characteristics are would be things I would encourage you to think about very early in the proposition so that you're validating before you even begin. You don't waste time, you don't waste money, you don't waste energy. You know that there is a market.
Thanks, Lillian. I remind the exhibitors as the judges are talking, if you have questions, please do write them down in the chat box.
I have a few
Comments.
comments. Yeah, I have a few comments, Dr. Bowers. First of all, to you, thank you for having me as a judge. It's an honor to do this for Embry-Riddle, being an alumni. It's good to give back. Just to build on what Richard and Lillian mentioned, one of the things from a venture capital or private equity aspect, or just an overall individual investor, one of the things that I look at is how that entrepreneur gets out amongst everyone and brings their idea to the mass market. Yes, developing a business model that produces revenue and is extremely important, but also how you differentiate yourself, how well prepared you are when you come to these events or you come in front of an investor. I mean, that was one of the things that I looked at through the videos. I mean, there was some that I thought hit the mark, and there were some that I thought needed work. But overall, you put yourself out there. You put yourself out there to hear both the good and the bad, which I think is the first step in becoming a successful entrepreneur. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, when you put yourself out there, sometimes you're good things, sometimes you're bad things, but you got to hear them all.
That's right. That's right. Got to build that tough skin early on.
Thank you. Thank you. Richard Fox or Jim Zucco, anyone like to share something?
Yeah, I'd say that one of the things you're going to learn, if you haven't already learned, is that you're on the steepest learning curve you've ever been on, in the sense that there is a lot to learn in a lot of different dimensions, and it's all iterative. The notion you've heard before is to fail fast and fail forward. Think of it as, climbing up this rather steep learning curve in all these different dimensions. The product dimension, which a lot of you came through really well, is just the beginning. But it is the difference between this and school is that at least in school, you have somebody that has an answer key. You're not only running into a lot of questions, but you're creating your own answer key. So it's a very different process. So look, a lot of really strong ideas presented in this process. Congratulations to each of you who put yourself out there, but get used to it. You're going to need to put yourself out there for a lot more feedback and a lot more constructive criticism, because getting this right is not easy. The good idea is a first step on the way to a lot of disappointment and a lot of negative feedback that will be shaped into a real company.
Excellent advice. Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
And congratulations to the entrants for taking that first step and getting something to happen. You have to do this over and over again. One technique to think about is that as judges, we see a pile of proposals. And by the end of the reviewing sequence, they start to blur together. So a good technique is to capture what you're all about and make sure it's memorable, so that a day later, oh, that was the company with the talking pillow. The concept that you can remember after the judging.
Thanks, Richard. Mike Geldart, you're maybe the closest to all of us in terms of being out of a newly hatched company. You would like to make a few comments.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and congrats to everyone who kind of participated today. Going from student to entrepreneur, or even kind of starting one of these competitions, it's not easy. But one of the things that I kind of want to echo some of the other judges is the importance of having a go-to-market strategy. Especially, one of the things, and in the tradition of stealing advice that Jim Zucco has given me, having the best product in the world doesn't mean anything if nobody knows about it, right? And that's where the go-to-market strategy comes into place. And the reason I want to bring this up is this is something that my company's experienced, and the traditional go-to-market means and all these guerrilla tactics that you would normally use in marketing, you really can't do now because of COVID, right? You can't go to events, you can't go to a basic cocktail networking party. So launching a company in the pandemic where it's produced a lot of really interesting opportunities and a lot of options that would normally not be there. There's also going to be some unique challenges, particularly in that go-to-market. And then not only understanding how you get the product in front, but how the product actually generates revenue and how you take that to profitability. So, but congrats to everyone as well.
Thank you, sir. Neil, anything to share?
I think I'll just add, it's you know, the only person who can make you successful is you. So you know, definitely congrats to everyone who did participate. You know, really enjoyed the exchange with everybody, and you know, I think it's up to you. If you have the passion and the motivation, then you know, keep driving forward, and you know, really appreciate some of the innovation and new ideas that were brought forth. So that was really good.
I will tell the exhibitors that the judges all remarked across both panels as the level of innovation and creativity that we saw in the exhibits this year. It was quite impressive. Andrea, you're representing the lawyers today. Would you like to say something about from your perspective?
Sure. And congratulations to everyone that participated. We did see a lot of really innovative and really great ideas. A lot of them are probably at maybe a pre-lawyer stage, but to the extent that, you know, I did have legal related questions. I was very impressed with the participants that had responses and had considered some of the regulatory things and some of the other legal hurdles that they might be facing. So I think that, you know, for the most part, presentations were well thought out. Some obviously farther along than others, but always really interesting to see all the innovative ideas that show up. So my pleasure to participate, and always look forward to great things coming out of this competition.
Thank you, Andrea. Kyle, hate to make you the last one up, but would you mind if you have something to share?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bowers. Again, want to repeat the congratulations to everyone. We did see some really creative, really great ideas out there. I would mirror the don't be afraid to fail. If the idea has traction and you are passionate about it, keep at it. I say that because of the company I work for, Virgin Galactic. I mean, 10 years ago, people thought, hey, going to space and this thing was kind of silly, but there is a lot of private interest in space travel now. So again, if you're passionate about the idea and it's got legs, keep trying. There may be someone out there that take that leap of faith with you. Thanks again.
I appreciate it. I have to apologize. I have a whole bunch of thumbnails on my screen, and I'm not sure if I see Greg Johnson. Is Greg, are you here? No. All right. So Greg, perhaps he travels a great deal. He's probably somewhere in Europe at the moment. So,
hey, Mike, I'd like to make one more comment, and I'll take up Greg's space. It'll be short, which is,
sure.
We all, the judges, like to give positive feedback to everyone. We're all trained to be able to do that at the same time. But you as an entrepreneur should ignore the positive feedback and just ask us for negative stuff.
That's unusual advice, Jim.
You'll get better by seeing what we didn't like, not by seeing what we liked. So it's part of the prepare yourself for developing a tough skin on the one hand. On the other hand, the real learning will come from what you're doing wrong or not doing enough of, or you've forgotten about, or is missing, not from what you've done well.
All right, thank you. That's unusual advice, but I think it's probably well said. A lot of wisdom in that. I think we have a number of shy entrepreneurs. They're reluctant to ask questions. I'm not seeing anything in the chat box. So if you have questions, please do type them up. We'll ask them for you. But to get us started, let me ask you all, I'm posing this question to the panel at large, judges at large. If you have to boil it all down, because there's a lot of different parts to getting a company up and off the ground. Yeah, if you have to boil it down to one thing, what one thing does an entrepreneur have to get right to make a venture successful?
Mike, Dr. Bowers, I think from my experience, you have to understand who your customer is. Okay, you have to understand what that pain point is in that customer or customer segment, what that need is in that market space. I think that has to be, you have to be clearly defined on that, and how you're going to make it different. How you're going to disrupt it, or how you're going to make it differentiation, different in your offering.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I heard a fellow, I'm sorry, I cannot describe it to the person I learned it from, but the statement was fall in love with the problem, not the technology.
Right. Well said too.
Someone else, please. What one thing?
Dr. Bowers, I'll jump in. I'll describe similar to Vincent. I would describe it as value, right? So understand your customer, but also what value do you bring, right? And then that translates into what is it worth? What can you charge for it? What does it cost you? So on and so forth. Creates that revenue model everyone was talking about. But it all starts with value, right? We're all solving a problem, but does that problem represent value? And that's what will eventually bring you success.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else with my question? I think we're starting to get some from the exhibitors now too. All right, let me pose a question from Sierra Fennell. Sierra asks, what is your opinion on coming to market a business that is the first of its kind? I understand space travel is very new to the public, so how would you go about creating something completely original? And let me kind of expand upon that question. Is it easier to start a company that's disruptive, or a company that replicates and does a better job with whatever's out there already, improving an existing business model?
Yeah, I think I can jump in with my opinion on that. It's always harder to be the first mover in a market. You are the first to experience some of the pain that no one else even knows it's there. Believe me, we're dealing with that every day. So I think it's easier to enter on the coattails of someone that's done it before. That said, the first mover into that space, that segment, will create a lot of knowledge that there is probably some ancillary value or aftermarket value in that knowledge that wouldn't be readily available to everyone else. So is it worth being the first mover into a segment? Yes, but be prepared to encounter things you didn't even know were out there. Is it easier to be the follower into the market? Yes, but as long as you specifically identify what it is you're going to take from the first mover and what you're going to improve on to be the follower into that market, if that makes sense.
That's an excellent answer. Thank you. Someone else would care to jump on that one?
Dr. Bowles, I'll do it. I agree with Kylie. He really he hit it right where it has to be. The first mover advantage tends to give you a little bit of an opportunity to make a move in a market. Defining it, though, is harder to do. Staying in front of it is harder to do. It's easier to learn from others. But having done that with mesh networks, the rewards on being the first mover and being successful at it far outweigh the opportunities that come with those following behind. But again, it's like any major company that exists today. If you don't stay on top of your game, if you don't continue to innovate, if you don't continue to improve, someone else is going to come along and eat your lunch. So it is necessary to stay in front of it, and it is necessary to be aware of your competition, as well as Lillian said earlier, know your market and know exactly who you're targeting.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
I want to add to that just a bit too. The notion of being a market maker is a really interesting one, but understanding that when you do have a little bit of time advantage, it took you longer to get there than the fast follower is going to take to get there. And in the case of some market makers, there's an opportunity to be acquired very early when you're still in a relatively nascent stage with it by some major player who wants to either take that on or protect against competition. So I think one of the most important things that I always ask starters, that I've had to ask myself 5 times over and co-founders 5 times over, is what do we want to do with this company? Do we want it to be a growth company that we grow over a long period of time and potentially take it to an IPO, which is not necessarily anymore the most critical first thing to think about? Or do we want to be acquired? And if we want to be acquired and exit this, when is that? Does that mean we need to be building something for a gap in a major player's portfolio, or we need to be building for a gap in the market of customers? So those are questions, very important ones to ask when you're thinking about being an innovator in a place where no one's ever been before. Is it important to a customer base first? Is that where they're likeliest to spend money? Or are you likeliest to be acquired by someone who wants that space and has a build buy decision to make?
You know, thank you, Lillian. That's a very, your answer is subtle in the sense that I had not thought you might choose to design a company just to be acquired, realizing
And
that,
I have done twice.
that good. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Well, we have some other questions that are coming in, so I'd like to, but if someone would like to share with that last one. Here's what I think a lot of us, I know everybody on the panel that has certainly dealt with this. Alyssa Lang asks, how do you deal with setbacks? I mean, obviously you start here and you start at point A and you go to point B. It's a direct linear path, right?
Yeah.
Can I start with that?
Yeah.
Which is,
It's a linear path. Yeah.
You're
Take
used
that
to
one,
it.
Lil. Yeah.
Lillian, good.
Go ahead,
I was
Lily.
just gonna say, it's which setback? The one today, the one tomorrow, the one next week, or the 52 after that? It's absolutely expect that there will be setbacks all along the way in every category of your business, whether it's in the people, your co-founders, how much money you have, whether the deal fell through, whether your technology fell apart, whether you had to rebuild everything that you started with, which often happens, by the way. So I think the most important thing is life's a test and then you pass. Figure out that you're going to make it through every one of these hurdles. And no matter what is presented to you, that you know who to reach out to and how to help mitigate those challenges all along the way. And we think about that in the context of risk analysis as a constant barometer of where the big gotchas may happen in front of you, and they're in every category of your business. So don't expect anything other than setbacks.
Like,
I heard a lot of folks chime in on that one.
Yeah, Dr. Bowers, I mean, I think just from experience, speaking personally from experience, I would say had setbacks every 9 days and had one good day out of it, out of a 2-week period. And it's how you deal with them. You're going to find out so much about yourself on those 9 days that you have those setbacks that you didn't know. Okay. You're going to find out how you deal with people, how you deal with life, and how you deal with that baby you have, your idea. You're going to find out so many things about yourself and what you can do in those 9 days till you get that one day that you didn't have that setback. I still learn today from things that happened to me in the past and things that happened to me now through my second career as an investor. I'm still learning. I still have those setbacks, and I still move forward.
Thanks, man.
It's just part of that. It's part of that your daily life now.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
Mike, one thing to remember, most things that are really important in life are paradoxes. And so while you'll hear us all talk about the perseverance to get problems solved, there's also the good sense to know when you're working on the right problem. And I've seen so many companies pursue a problem because they're so driven, but it may not be the right problem. So as we don't want to discount the importance of perseverance, but make sure you're not being Wile E. Coyote. I have seen so many young companies go to great extremes to solve problems that just weren't solvable and weren't really relevant to the company issue at hand. So, I mean, that's one of the big challenges. Is this one to sort of stake the company on, or is there another alternative? Always look for alternatives to problems Don't think you can solve everyone yourselves, particularly today, the notion of a lot of technology and a lot of solutions are available off the shelf that weren't available 10 years ago. So really explore the adjacent markets as well for partnerships and for technology that may advance your cause without having to, invent everything yourself.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else?
This is Richard.
Hey, Rick.
Design your business the way you design an aircraft. No single points of failure. You're going to have setbacks. Things are going to go wrong. Think ahead. What could fail and crash the business? And what are the remediations, the mitigations that you can set up ahead of time so that the setbacks are not fatal?
Thanks. And that analogy resonates well around here. So anyone else? Well, let me ask then, Advar Amir asked, what are some tips on how to raise funds during the pandemic? And how do you make the most out of this situation? I know a lot of investors went into hiding when this all broke out and a lot of money dried up. Would you like to speak to that for a moment?
That was the initial thought, Dr. Bowers. We would all go into hiding there in the March timeframe. And because we're all looking at our companies in our portfolio to make sure they had enough cash to get through this year and possibly into 2021. So the focus, our focus from an investing standpoint was diverted. And to look at the companies that we had invested in. But if you look at crisis that has hit the economy or has hit the world, like this one's happening now, if you model that and you look at innovation that has come out of these downturns, I mean, there's a lot good has come out of when you get on the other side of these down, a lot of good innovation that's coming out. The people the individuals that are not forced to redefine themselves in a new career, some of those things are going to come out as new ways of how we work and how we conduct our daily life. So from an investor standpoint, after we got through, figuring out how we can save the companies, get them, make sure they have the cash to get through the year, we're back looking for ideas. We're back looking for ways that are going to help not the economy, but help business, help the environment through these tough times. So we look at companies that are specializing in ESG type activities, activities that are more geared toward climate change, global warming, the alternative energies. So we're looking at things like that are going to come out and be at the forefront here as we get through this pandemic. But investing is still very active now, at least what I'm seeing out there now.
Thanks, Vince. That's very useful to know. We have a number of other investors on the panel. Are you finding the same thing, or are people still being cautious with their dollars?
I think it varies from investor to investor. I think for this audience to go right at the question, we know that TREP Expo this year required some different skills and some different approaches. The kind of skills and approaches that the TREP Expo required are the same ones needed to raise money. We've made 3 investments in this time period without face-to-face meetings with the teams. Okay, and the ones that work, from all of the things we say, what makes a successful business, they come very well prepared, and they don't leave anything unanswered. They don't rely, if you'll excuse the term, on their personality or their ability to dance to get through a pitch. They really work hard on making the story complete and in anticipating questions they're going to be asked relative to fundraising. So it demands a lot more homework, but it's out there. And I think what Vince said, there's money available, but you have to adapt to the new environment.
That's right.
Thanks, Jim. Anyone else?
Mike, sorry.
No, I was going to ask Jim a question. Jim, throughout your career, did you think you'd make an investment just by talking to someone through video without seeing them in person?
No.
Okay.
Did you?
No, I did not. You know, I did it. It really tested your it tested the limit. It actually, you know, goes back to we talked about. You find out a little bit more about yourself. So I found, yeah, I can make hopefully a good sound business investment decision by using Zoom now.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Sorry to digress there a little bit, but.
I think that was great. I love that interaction.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to offer that for companies that have come through Starter Studio and our seed stage program that are actively pitching investors. They've actually done quite well this year, much to the surprise of all of us, frankly, for the very same reasons that Jim and Vince both cite. There is a requirement to be so much more buttoned up in presenting your story, your market opportunity, and your ability to survive these kinds of events in the world, to have the wherewithal in terms of the management team, in terms of capital and resources and other assets that will carry you through, and that your customer base and your market and industry are not terribly impacted, or that in fact, this was the case for at least 2 of our companies, that they had something that responded better to COVID in a COVID kind of scenario than it would have in the past. So there was actually a compelling need that was created in this COVID environment. They were able to find it and think through it and convince investors that this was a great place to place their bets today.
Yeah.
Good.
This is Richard. I think it's useful for the entrepreneurs to recognize that the typical investor, professional investor, looks at 100 deals to invest in 1. The running rate's 1%. This year, the number of deals for us has doubled. So we're down to 0.5% investment. And so it's playing for the gold medal. You got to be the very best in that pile of deals that came in that month. And that's where the magic occurs, when you bubble to the top because you've really got your act together.
Good. Thank you, Richard. Let me ask, this is an interesting question. It's something we struggle with in Central Florida often. Sophia Brunden asked, does setting up in a geographic location with specialized skills or knowledge resources boost your growth at an early stage? As an example, does a tech company have to set up in Silicon Valley?
You asking me that?
Well,
you know what my bias is going to be. First of all, today there are a lot of companies escaping Silicon Valley because of the high taxes and the inability to compete for the highest wages in the area for folks who are leaping between companies. And in fact, people there are escaping and looking for other places to be and working virtually for many of the companies there. I will say my son just went out as a COO of a startup in life sciences in Silicon Valley. And I was like, you did what? Crazy time to do it, but okay. So what I will say is that geography can matter around particular domains. I will use Central Florida as an example around space and space technology, and other parts of the country around e-commerce or other sorts of hard tech. But when you begin to look for a place to be, look for places where talent is readily available. Today, it's more virtualized, so it might not matter as much as it once did, but that where there are reasonably sophisticated investors around your domain as well who understand what you're doing, and there's an opportunity to get early capital in the form of angels, that there are also good resources for mentors and advisors who can come to your aid on a whim and really dig what you're doing, really get it, really understand it, and really want to support it. But it's one of the reasons that the affiliation with a university like Embry-Riddle says there are that whole constellation of resources that mean you don't have to be geographically associated, but if you're organizationally associated, you may get benefit of the very same things. My opinion.
Thanks, Lillian. Let me direct Neil. Let me ask you. You're in Boston, and Boston's known for being a hotbed for a particular type of technology and an investing base as well. What would your opinion be on that?
Yeah, no, much like others have shared, I think I would underscore what Lillian said around finding your community, right? So, you know, making sure there's other folks that can kind of encourage and give you feedback, and you know, that could be in the form of investors, mentors, whatever it may be. But for us specifically, I'd say over half of our portfolio are actually in the flyover states. So we have software tech companies in the middle of Iowa, and also in Silicon Valley. So they're kind of all over the place. Like others have mentioned, it's a virtual world now. So, you know, kind of the possibilities are endless. But yeah, I think just having having the right community is really important. So to underscore that.
Very good. Anyone else want to jump on that one?
I think if we'd asked the question 5 or 10 years ago, we would have gotten different answers. I think as the world has changed, and as things like the Entrepreneurship Center at Embry-Riddle and the other universities in the area, and what Lillian is leading at Starter Studio, really starts to create these communities where the resources, the employees, the experienced people, and having started a few companies in areas that aren't rich in what I'll call people willing to leave their jobs. So, you know, the career 30 years and out, which is less and less these days, but access to the right talent, colleagues, other employees, thing, in my view, is the most important. So if you got access to talent, the rest of the things will follow. So in the examples that were given earlier in the flyover states, they had a core group of talent that could make it happen. And then the investors came there.
And I bet they're often clustered around a university somewhere.
No doubt.
Yep. Anyone else? All right, well, let me ask, this is a question about entrepreneurship, but it's also a philosophical question, I think. Alexander Roy asked, what is the one tip you wish that you would have given yourself when you were first starting out? A retrospective question. What would you counsel yourself on?
Ooh,
Yes, ma'am.
listen more.
Yeah. I'd supplement by saying being more vulnerable, admitting things I didn't know rather than kind of pretending I did, because you didn't want to appear, but really, really asking lots of questions and being vulnerable.
And listening. Yeah, that's an interesting and that's a wise answer from both of you. Anyone want to try to top that one?
I know I talked about this earlier, Dr. Byers, about getting out and getting your idea out there for people to look at. I mean, I think if I could, you know, take those own words and then restart my career back and use those and get out there more, and don't be so much of an introvert at times, and not be afraid to take the idea out, you know, and what Jim was saying, you know, don't be afraid to go out and look for a mentor.
Mm.
All right. And they can help you a lot, you know, so I'd give that's the advice I'd give myself.
Thank you, sir. And when we hear over and over again, the role of mentoring being such an important between the early stages.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Bowers, I'll pile on to Vincent's comment as well. I think just speaking up, right? It's and I know, you know, especially the Embry-Riddle community, I know a number of our participants were aerospace engineering majors, like myself.
Yeah.
Not known to be the most boisterous going.
That's right. Yeah.
It's you know, just speak up, take a chance. You know, a lot of times you might be the smartest person in the room. You don't have to tell everybody that, but you know, good to contribute when you can.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. All good advice. All right. Let's see. Caitlin Williamson asked, how would you begin planning your go-to-market strategy? A number of you pointed out that was something you thought was very important in the videos. How would you go about planning your go-to-market strategy? What aspects should you first consider?
Well, I'm happy to start. The go-to-market strategy is often confused with marketing. And I think the first thing you must consider is that go-to-market strategy says you have identified who your customer is, what they care about, where they buy things, how they buy, who influences them, how they make decisions, how they contract, and how you reach them. The words they use, literally the words they use. So when you start thinking about your go-to-market strategy and then wrap that up in a marketing strategy that allows you to get there. So it may include channels of distribution, partners that help you get there, and the way that you equip those partners and or your own sales force or your own direct-to-consumer verbiage to reach those people through this clarity of understanding. So go-to-market strategy means really understanding your market, how you get there, who cares, and why. And it might mean, aerospace is a great example. It might mean that you have a whole bunch of industry analysts you need to be cultivating, not just you're going to send out marketing messages and direct relationships to customers. You need to find out who influences their decision making, where they spend their money and how. And then you need to understand how you're going to contract with them, because that also helps you determine how you hire a sales force or others who are going to help you get and reach them. So there's an awful lot to this. It's not, there's no single answer to this, but it means it envelops everything about who your customer is and how you're going to reach them and how you're going to close a deal.
Good.
And if this has been recorded anywhere, Mike, I would encourage everybody to go back and make a clip of what Lillian just said, put it on your PC and share it with everyone you're dealing with. That was very succinct and very on target. Probably so far, the best advice has been given all day.
Wow, thanks, Jim.
I wrote it down. Yeah.
Well, it does make the distinction between go-to-market and marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I did.
Unfortunately, people try to wrap those things together. They're not the same. Go-to-market feeds marketing, and that's it.
Yeah. From the market analysis point of view, I think, you had really good points, Lillian. One of the things I would just add is, just what that size of your target market is. Okay. And as an investor, you want to see that. You want to see that big market. You want to see how you're going to the steps that Lillian talked about. How you're going to attack that. So, is that market big enough? Is that market big enough to what for you to go after and for you to attract investors? Yeah.
And you don't do analysis by assuming it's 1% of the Chinese population.
Exactly. Yeah. How many stars are there in the universe? 1 billion. If I get 10%, I'm done. Yeah, it doesn't work. So, but the other thing that's important, I think, to Vincent's comment is that you may have market segmentation that says you have 1 or 2 or 3 even verticals that you need to address, and your go-to-market strategy might be slightly different for them. As a startup, for the most part, you're going to be trying to figure out which the biggest one is to target first, not to try to do them all at the same time, because you simply can't. There's no way that an early company can do that. So figure out what the biggest is, but be able to articulate to yourself, to your people, to your investors, and to others, industry analysts in particular, what it is you're going to do in the future that drives your growth and the trajectory of growth that says you're going to return value to the company.
Okay.
Being the lone lawyer, probably one of the things I can contribute here is, I've seen clients that have innovative, amazing ideas, and they're getting down the road, but they also haven't considered that some industries are more heavily regulated than others. And I'm sure no investor wants to know, once they're 1 foot in the door, that there's some huge regulatory or legal hurdle to the actual go-to-market implementing the actual strategy. So that's just something to sort of keep in the background, particularly in the more complex, more highly regulated industries.
Anyone else?
And Dr. Bowers, I'll just pile on there. I think with, I think understanding your overarching target market, obviously that's critical. I think the other piece of it is where are you going to start? had a good exchange with John Reese, who's one of our participants this week, and
Yeah.
talking about flight schools, right? And we talked about the big universities versus the small kind of mom and pop flight schools. So you don't have any customers, there's no referenceable clients. So where do you begin? And so I think understanding both the overarching market, but also where are you going to begin and how are you going to execute that is critical for any startup.
Thank you, sir. That critical first customer. Yep. Thank you. And Sophia is coming in with a second question, but I think we just answered. How important is it to allocate time and money to market analysis at the early stage? Sophia, I think you just heard it's very important. It's very important that even when resources are limited, investors want to know there are people to sell to. Let me ask, John Lee ask, what are the most important aspects of a pitch? We have people on the panel who are pitched to all the time, almost every day. We have people who pitch. Mike, I'm talking to you, who pitch all the time, almost every day. What is the most important part of the pitch?
That's a really good question. Well, for one, I think that you need to very succinctly be able to communicate kind of, why it is, or I guess it depends. It really depends on who you're pitching to and what exactly you're pitching. So I will just take it in the context of like investor pitching. So it's basically saying kind of, what is it that you do? How are you really different in the marketplace? And most importantly, how are you going to make money? How are you going to take this into a profitable business? And the other thing that I would add at the very end that a lot of times gets overlooked and it's tough in the startup space is establishing credibility. Everybody can say that they have a reasonable idea to make an anti-gravity machine, and there's US patents filed to say that, but you have to have some reasonable credibility in order to be able to be taken seriously. And I think that especially in this COVID environment, everybody's getting solicited all the time. Everybody's getting, and so you got to figure out a way how you're going to break through the noise and how you're going to establish credibility so that will actually cause someone to motivate to act, whether it's to further the conversation for investment or pick up the phone to get on a true sales call. Does anyone else have anything they want to add on that one?
I'll pick up on your credibility comment, Mike. I mean, that is one of the things that I look at through when I'm sitting in front of someone that's pitching me. Every slide, I'm looking for that credibility aspect. Did they do their homework? How well do they prepare through those steps that you mentioned? The other thing is more of, maybe not on the slides, but it sure can come out as your passion for your idea. And what drove you to thinking about this idea and going through the whole process of putting this together and wanting to make this your life. I mean, it's going to be 7x24 for you now. So I think the credibility and your preparedness in those areas you talked about, just something that I'd like to add to.
Thank you, sir.
And reinforcing some things that you both said, but simplistically, whether it's a customer, investor, whatever, know your customer. We're often pitched by people who may pitch an idea to us or whatever, who have not looked on LinkedIn, have not looked at our website, have not done any research to see what the level of knowledge, what the level of potential interest is on the person they're pitching. And if they can't be empathetic when asking for money, I don't believe they can be empathetic when asking for sales. It's the same kind of thing. The empathy of knowing your customer comes through, and for the folks who go through the process, like the 3 investments we made during COVID, they did their homework, not only on everything about them and their product, but also about who they were pitching to and what other investments we made that were similar. And so their story was complete and it was inclusive of their audience, which I think is really critical. It's obvious in a sales environment. It's not always so obvious in an investment environment.
So let me, as a professor, step into my professorial role and ask the exhibitors, how many of you guys checked out the judges prior to getting on the line today? So that you knew who was going to be judging you and who you would be talking to. Good point. Excellent point. Anyone else want to comment on that?
I just wanted to maybe pose a question related to this to some of the other panelists. If an entrepreneur has an idea and then they know they don't check all the boxes from a credibility standpoint, do you find value if they go try to partner with or align themselves with someone who does have credibility in the market? Does that bring weight to the pitch?
Absolutely.
If you don't have a team, you don't have a company. Even if the team is very small, rarely do single entrepreneurs ever able to raise money.
Right. So I guess the value there is recognize your shortcomings, right? And
Well, not everybody can do everything, so it's the team. I mean, to complement the skills.
And is the question whether those team members are sort of virtual or ad hoc team members, like advisors, advisory board members, mentors, those kinds of things?
I guess the question was more related to touching on Mike's statement of he looks for credibility. If an idea is great, but the entrepreneur realizes I'm not checking all the boxes, is it worth it in the early stage to go find a SME, go find an expert to align with, and bring tangential credibility, as it were, to the pitch?
I know that's been a success factor for me in the past in companies that were scientific, for example, where I'm not a scientist, nor were the co-founders. So finding a scientific board and putting those people around it to say, yes, there is credibility here and they could be referenceable for investors and others really turned out to be important.
Okay. Let me ask this next question to Richard Fox and to Richard LaCursey. This comes from Bill Peterson. Do you have a list of quantifiable and qualifiable measures that you use to assess opportunities? And I know that you do, so that's why I'm asking you.
I don't know if Richard wants to go first or last, but absolutely. What happens, we have I guess from a basic pitch perspective, there are certain things we're looking for as how the team interacts with one another, how they interact with questions, a lot of what we've heard already in this discussion, how credible they are and how they bring things together. That's really what we're trying to look for. It's what we're really trying to put together. What's most important to us really is the team. The idea is second or third down a list, maybe. It's how well the team works together, the credibility of that team, as we've heard before. And also, I think, as Jim mentioned as well, the how well prepared they are when they come in, how well they know us, how well they know themselves and the product and the markets they're trying to address. What we tend to do in our pitch sessions, we have 22 partners in the fund right now, and there's generally somebody that's a little bit more experienced than others. So we have a team of 5 people that make most of the evaluations, but there's always an expert or someone more of an expert sitting in the room. And I'll sort of warn the presenters, what happens in an environment, generally in a pitch session, particularly if there are a number of people in the room, the wind starts to blow in a certain direction. And if it's not blowing in a direction you want it to go, you've got to change it and change it pretty quickly, because you can definitely see the partners in a room, they start to buy into an idea, positive or negative. And if it's a negative one, it's going to bring an end to your pitch pretty quickly. So I really advise people to really know the market you're presenting to, the team that you're presenting to, and understand how to read faces in a room. And that's the difficult part right now with COVID, but still even in an environment like this, you can read people's faces and you can understand if people get it or don't they get it. I'll let Richard Fox go with the rest.
So a good connection is to use the business model canvas to think through what it is that you're pitching. And we track that as we're listening to the pitches. Have they identified who the customer is? And I take that to the extreme. Can you identify what the typical job title is of the customer that you're going to pursue? And then the value proposition, and then the sales channel, and then the financial support to make it happen. There are 9 boxes in the business model canvas. You need to have an answer to all 9 boxes, and they have to be coherent. So as I've told some of you in the past, we had a discovery at the Idea Fund that when we looked at the 45 successful exits where we invested into a company and they grew and they were sold for at least $200 million. That's happened 45 times now. Looked at their original pitch decks. None of those pitch decks talked about the actual reason that they got a lot of money when they were sold to somebody else. Not one, zero. So what are we investing in? We're investing in fairy tales. I use that term intentionally. We're investing in fairy tales. Nobody can tell the future. We still don't know who the president is going to be in January. It's not possible to predict the future to that level of precision. They're fairy tales, but the winners are able to tell a fairy tale built on the business model canvas that is believable, plausible, and totally thought out. And when we get a company that has achieved that good interaction, good human relations, and they've really thought out their fairy tale so that it's believable, that's the starting point for an interesting investment discussion.
Thank you, Richard. And a brief promotional announcement. We will be holding a workshop in the spring on storytelling.
Yes.
Just,
good.
You know. Anyone else would like to say something about that question? All right, well, we have a couple more, and then I think we'll probably be moving toward wrapping up, but two more to go. Anthony DiMaggio asked, how do you get in contact with companies that are much bigger than you are and you don't really have a good channel in? How do you even have a chance to pitch your idea? How do you get in front of these folks?
I can actually go on that because that's something we're going through right now. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can go out and cold contact. I've never had any success with cold contacts. I think networking your way in, and you basically start off with saying, you know, who is it that are in my immediate network that I know very well? You know, being at a large aviation university, you'll be amazed at how many people other people know. So my business started off like this. We got introduced to our medical director, who's now running a major hospital chain, just by simply going through a professor and going through research. So I would say starting with who you know, and then being able to network your way in, and you might end up even going in a different direction than you thought you would go, but it ends up working better. Ends up working out better.
Good, thanks, Mike. That's good hands-on experience, recent experience. Anyone else? Okay. Jung-Soo Kim asks, how would you fight status quo and keep innovation spirit and effort alive? How do you keep from falling into the same old rat trap that you're trying to compete against?
That's an interesting question for an entrepreneurial group. Most entrepreneurial companies have the opposite problem, that there's too much innovation going on, too many directions, and it's a distraction. So there's a balance between the excitement of new ideas and the focus of we only have so many dollars, we only have so many hours in the week, and there are only so many people we can go out and meet. And so what is exciting that we can focus on?
Anyone else? Well, let me exert moderator's prerogative and let me ask the last question. Is now the right time to be starting a company?
Yes.
Is there a good time to start a company? Lillian, you said yes.
Anytime's a good time to start a company.
Why?
Well,
You can't get toilet paper at the, I mean, why is that?
I think I got to agree with Lillian. I think anytime's a good time to bring your ideas out there. And the more you believe in that idea, the more you're going to be searching out for people that want that, you know, and if you continue to do that and you don't find someone, well, then you kind of have to pivot. all right, and keep going. I mean, that's the entrepreneur spirit. Why does entrepreneurs start a company, finish one company, start another one again? They're not looking at, well, this and that, you know, that's in their blood. That's what they continue want to do. They're serial entrepreneurs. And, I mean, you need to have that in you, and it's nothing that you're going to read in a book or a textbook, and it has to be inside you. That's why they come take your class, Dr. Bowers, because they have that passion inside of you. And if they have that passion, then starting that business, becomes natural. And then starting another one after you get done with this continues to come natural.
Thank you, sir.
So I would say one of the reasons that makes this time so interesting to start a business is because a lot of people are completely rethinking the way that they live and the way that they do business and the way that they kind of go about doing things, right? I think we've touched on the aspect of nobody here thought that they would ever do an investment deal without ever doing a face-to-face meeting even 6 months ago. So there's potentially, and I know that this is kind of a widely used term, but there's potentially a higher early adopter base. There's more people that may be willing to try something new simply just out of necessity.
Good point. Let me ask the question with a little bit different spin, because this year we have a number of alumni competing. These are people that are, let's say, they're more seasoned than others. And yet we also have a number of students who are young in their life stage. When is the best time of life to start a company?
Are you waiting for me on this?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Yeah, you're good at kicking it off, Lillian.
Yeah, well, this also kind of goes back to some of my other work in life, which has been around age and longevity. And I'll tell you that MIT did a study a few years ago that says that a 50 or older first-time tech starter has a 3x likelihood of both value and on 3 dimensions: company value, revenues, and exit valuations over a shorter period of time than their 30-year-old counterpart. And the reasons are these: that the longer you have spent in an industry, the more you know about it. So the more you know your customer already. So a lot of that sort of customer discovery stuff and things that go on in the early, how things are bought, who makes decisions, who influences, all the stuff we talked about in the go-to-market strategy, well, you've already got that wrapped up in your brain if it's your industry. So you get over that hurdle earlier and you make fewer mistakes in that earlier stage. So there is a great deal to be said about being seasoned in your industry and starting there. You understand the problems more deeply, you understand the dynamics more deeply. But on the other hand, there's also a great deal more to be said about multi-generational starting teams and how important it is to have that sort of diversity, like all diversity, in an organization in order to be most effective. You get a counterbalance of a lot of things going on. So is it better to be younger or older? No, it's just better to know what you're doing and find all the resources that you possibly can to make it successful. That's the answer, I think.
Thank you.
Mike, I've always sort of been a real proponent of experience. I echo it with where Lillian was in the beginning of her presentation. I do like the idea of diversity amongst the team, but a startup team that's just out of university, just out of school, whatever the case may be, I personally think that's a much tougher road to climb, simply because you just don't have the experience and the knowledge, exactly as Lillian was talking about. I'm not trying to discourage very early or young entrepreneurs, but a management team that's got a lot of diversity, a lot of experience, both old and new, I think does a lot for the success of the potential success for that entity.
Thanks, Richard. Mike Geldart, any quick rejoinder?
I mean, I don't know. I'm the least experienced out of everyone here on the panel, but for me at least, I think that if you have the idea, if you've got a reasonable way of how you're going to turn it into a business, I think you just got to go for it. As Richard Fox said, no one can really predict the future. So you've just got to go for it. But what I will say is that if you're coming into an industry that really does, and really any industry is like this, it values a lot of experience, it can be very, very helpful and actually significantly changes your odds of success of having people around you who are very experienced and know what they're doing. So we're a Startup Studio graduate. And I really think having an accelerator, having a strong mentor board, whether or not you listen to them, Mike Bowers is, and I conversations about this, but that's really where I feel like it comes to be. But at some point, you know, the part of being an entrepreneur is just looking at it and saying, we're just going to decide to do this and just going and doing it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to everyone who asked questions. Thanks to our judges for very, very insightful, very wise answers to those questions. I know we have other questions on the part of the exhibitors. We're running out of time. I would encourage you, the folks that are judging here, these are all very approachable people. You are certainly, I would encourage you to reach out to the center, to myself and to the people who work at the center, and let us help match up your questions with the people we know that have the answers for you. So please, let's keep the questions coming and let's find some answers for you. Thanks, everyone. Dean Gibson, are you with us?
I am indeed.
Would you like to share anything in terms of a concluding thought?
I'm trying to. My computer's not behaving here.
I had the same problem.
Okay. First, I just want to say thank you. My most sincere thanks go to our judges for sharing your time and expertise with us today. I wish every aspiring entrepreneur was so fortunate as to have your engagement and your advice. I have to say, I loved the question, is it a good time? Because like the people on the call, I agree, there is no bad time. And for our would-be entrepreneurs, I'm a strong believer in the fact that fortune favors the brave and the well-prepared. I also believe that opportunities don't just happen, you have to create them. And I think you received really good advice towards doing that. Just like our current circumstances, the future is going to hold both great challenges and great opportunities. And anyone can tell you about the risk involved, but entrepreneurs can see the reward and go after it. And I think that's what you heard. So regardless of the outcome of today's competition, I have no doubt each of you will go far. And I just want to wish all of you the best of luck and remind you that it's the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world that actually do it. So good luck, and we look forward to seeing you go far and soar.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Dr. Gibson. As we prepare to announce the prize winners, let me wrap up by saying thanks. First, thanks to Dean Gibson for being supportive of all of our efforts here at the center. Second, a big thanks to the center associates, Callie, Sophia, Oko, and Deanna, for all the work you put into making this event happen. Third, a special shout out to Amanda Stapleton, who, along with the other administrative staff, the O'Malley College of Business, Robin and Janine, for their tireless attention to detail and for keeping us on track. I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. Thanks to our judges for sharing their time, their talent, and experience with all of us today. If we could for a moment have a Zoom round of applause for our judges and the energy and effort they put into today's event, please. Finally, thanks to our exhibitors for participating. Even if you don't walk away today with a big check, you have distinguished yourself. Entrepreneurs do stuff. A lot of people talk. A lot of people talk a lot. You people do. It took gumption, it took initiative, it took effort, all while handling a pandemic. Take the lessons you learned from this experience and build upon that. This is just the first step in the journey. We at the Center, the O'Malley College of Business, and Embry-Riddle at large are here to help. If we lit a fire today, a small one perhaps, then you want to know about next steps. Nick, can you put up the slide that shows the programs going forward?
Yes, 1 second.
Okay. As Nick puts that up, I will point out to you, we have a number of things coming up in the spring and some things you might be able to do right now. Yes, that's it. Then the first next step is to create a profile in the center startup tree. We will be initiating a formal mentoring program in early spring. If you think you have the background and inclination to be a mentor, or if you're interested in being mentored, please go to the center's webpage and create your profile on Startup Tree. And you can see the address. It's the very top one there, the erau.startuptree.co. That's your first step. The second step is to sign up for Test Flight Bootcamp. Test Flight Bootcamp is a workshop of customer discovery and business model development. It's offered over 5 afternoons in January and February. We'll be doing it virtually this year, so you can do it from wherever you are in the world, as long as the time works for you. It is offered in close cooperation with Starter Studio, and you've already heard Mike talk about his success going through the program that Lillian leads. The Starter Studio is a very important strategic partner with the Center of the Research Part. Finally, plan on making an application to our spring competition Launch Your Venture, Florida's most prestigious competition for student-led technology companies. All right. Now, for what we all gathered here today for, who might have won? Let me start off by announcing first the People's Choice Award. The People's Choice Award was decided this year by the number of likes that your YouTube video received on the O'Malley College of Business YouTube channel. And Nick, are we ready to roll the slides?
Yes, sir.
Roll. People's Choice Award is awarded to Frost. $1,000 goes to Frost. Oh, take me back. There you go. All right, congratulations to Frost. Now the judges' prizes. Usually we only prize out 1, but this year we were able to prize out 3, and we have 2 flights, so we're giving away 6 awards. Going from lowest to highest, let me first announce the yellow flight 3rd place. The yellow flight 3rd place goes to Go Clean Cup at $500. That's the judges' award for yellow flight, 3rd place. 2nd place goes to Aerotail, $750 to Aerotail camera mounts. 1st place in the yellow flight goes to Nomi, $1,500 to Nomi. Congratulations to all the winners in the yellow flight. Now, the orange flight. Orange flight, 3rd place. Think You Can Cook. Think You Can Cook, $500. Congratulations. 2nd place in the orange flight was Frost again at $750, took 2nd place. First time ever we've had a company take both People's Choice and a judge's prize. 1st place, orange flight, Space Domain Awareness. Space Domain Awareness, $1,500 from the judge's prize, orange flight. Congratulations to all of our winners. But again, please remember, if you're not one of the people with the big check, you still have distinguished yourself in so many respects from the rest of the world. And please do continue your entrepreneurial journey. Congratulations, everyone. If you want a prize, contact the center through our email so we can arrange to get the real check sent to you. Thanks everybody for being a part of TREP Expo 2020. Stay safe, stay sane, enjoy the holidays.